Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? I think from a Saints perspective, we are all assuming that New Orleans is going to stay at 14 and draft an offensive tackle. And if they move up, it's maybe because someone they covet, like Joe Alt or maybe Brock Bowers, takes what they perceive as a little bit of a slide. I don't think anyone is putting it past the New Orleans Saints to trade up, okay? It's what the Saints do. They're aggressive in the draft. They move up. This one, though, caught me a little off guard because it's not an LSU perspective. It's not a fan site. Two very reputable NFL reporters, one of them a draft analyst, put together a mock draft, and they landed on the Saints drafting Malik Nabers. Field Yates and it was on ESPN was on Peter Schrager's podcast, and they did a joint mock draft. This is This is them discussing ultimately the Saints trading up with Tennessee to get to number 7 to take Malik Nabers, which, by the way, just let me set the stage. They've got Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, 1, 2, 3. J.J. McCarthy, 4 to the Giants. Giants moving up to 4 to take McCarthy. Marvin Harrison, 5 to the Chargers. Rome Odunze, 6 to Arizona. And then the Saints going up to take Malik Nabers at 7.
I'm going to state that I believe Tennessee is a compelling trade down team. We're going to have some fun here. Let me disrupt things a little bit, okay? This is going to be tough to do because they have paid premiums recently. I'm having the New Orleans Saints trade up here.
I love this. Go on.
The Titans are at 7. They have a glaring needed offensive tackle. We all acknowledge that. What I am not convinced of, Peter, is that while I have Joe Alt as the number 1 tackle on my board, and I think many in the draft industry complex have it the same way, I am not convinced that the league has complete consensus that Joe Alt is head and shoulders above Tali Fuaga or Olu Fashanu, Troy Fautana, whoever it might be, right? With offensive linemen, especially when you have one of the absolute greatest to ever do it in Bill Callahan, he might say, hey, you guys, I'm happy with Joe Alt at 7. But if we're at 14 and we get Olu Fashanu, I'm cool with it too. I love it. I'm going to do my trade down. So the Saints now at 7 and the Titans at 14. I do think the Saints have a desperate need at offensive tackle. They may say, hey, let's address that. And round 2, Malik Nabers off the board. He stays home. New Orleans.
Wow. Hard to listen. There's 2 ways to look at it. Number 1 is, would you be thrilled to have Malik Nabers? Absolutely, right? Look, in a vacuum, if the New Orleans Saints moved up, took Malik, now you're talking about arguably the most dynamic offensive weapon in this draft going to New Orleans. It immediately solves your issue for Derek Carr. Now you've got Olave, Shaheed, you add Nabers to that mix, and they're unguardable. There aren't enough NFL teams that have 3 defensive backs that can handle those 3 guys. You may have 1, some may have 2. Nobody has 3 that can handle that. Immediately it elevates Derek Carr because of your commitment to Carr. You got to get him weapons. So, yeah, in a vacuum, I love it. Plus, Louisiana guy, close to home. Yes. Love it, love it, love it. But you haven't fixed offensive line. And what would it cost you? Remember, to move up, like we've talked about this a little bit before. So just look at what the Eagles did last year when they got Jalen Carter. The Eagles went up to number 9 to take Jalen Carter. And they gave up their first-round pick and a 4. So, look, the Saints could give up this year's 1, right, the 14th pick, and next year's 4. Would you do it? I mean, my immediate reaction is, yeah, that's it. All it takes is next year's 1 or this year's 1 and a 4. Then, yeah, I mean, that stands to reason that would make a lot of sense if you could do a trade like that. That's a comparable spot in the draft, like what happened a year ago. But it doesn't eliminate your desperate need for an offensive lineman. And I don't know that if you're sitting there at at 45, that you're talking about the same realm of player as you are at the beginning of the draft. Like, you just heard that there when they're talking about Callahan saying, all right, the NFL doesn't necessarily have this consensus as to who is the best offensive lineman. And keep in mind, with kind of what they just discussed there, the way that sort of plays out, Williams, Daniels, May, McCarthy, Harrison, Adunze, Nabers, 7. They got Dallas Turner, 8. Fautanu, 9. Bowers, 10. Latu, then Alt, 12. They don't even have Alt as the top offensive tackle. And they still got Fuaga and Fashanu, or he said Fashanu, whichever way you put the emphasis, at 16. So that's the tough part for me, is to look at and say, yes, moving up to get Malik Nabers gets you arguably the most dynamic offensive weapon in this draft. And I love it on so many levels, but it doesn't eliminate your biggest need, which is offensive tackle, where at 14, you're going to have plenty of options without having to give up assets. And in this draft class with so much receiving talent, there's going to be a really good receiver there at 45. Is it Nabers? No, but what is the biggest need for you? And the biggest need is not receiver. Because if Derek Carr isn't upright, he can't throw to the receivers anyway. So while I would love to see it, and honestly, if we're sitting here on that Friday after the first round of the draft, and you tell me the Saints have Malik Nabers, I'm probably stoked about it. I'm doing backflips because what an incredible weapon to have in this offense. But I'm really concerned about what they do at 45 because I don't know if there's a good enough offensive lineman that's a plug-and-play guy like you'd have with any of the guys we just talked about with Alts or the 3 Fs. Fautanu, Fuaga, and Fashanu. Interesting. From Field Yates and Peter Schrager, Saints moving up to 7 to take Malik Nabers if it does play out that way. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.